The airlock hissed open with a reluctant sigh as the recycled atmosphere of the Xeros science vessel met the sharp mountain air of Wyoming. Nathaniel Trent stepped out, squinting into the morning light. He wore a lightweight exosuit, matte gray with a yellow shoulder patch that read, Interspecies Collaboration Program Human Department. He adjusted the strap of the equipment case over his shoulder and glanced behind him. No one followed. Guess I'm the early bird, Nathaniel muttered, trudging toward the mobile lab pod parked on the rocky incline. He was halfway through unloading geological scanners when the Xeros liaison, an alien named Luthik, emerged from the ship with the same awkward posture it always had when walking on Earth's gravity. Luthik was tall, translucent-skinned, and wore a translator device clipped under its throat. "You are working again, Nathaniel?" Luthik asked, blinking slowly as it examined the clutter of tools and cables around the human's feet. "Yeah. Thought I'd get a head start before the others show up. We arrived at local sunrise. You are the only one present." Nathaniel chuckled. "That's kind of the idea." By mid-morning, he had hauled down 2 thermal imaging units, a mineral core sampler, and 3 crates of calibration rods. He was balancing one of the heavier rods on his shoulder when his foot caught on a jagged rock. The uneven ground gave way beneath him. He went down hard. There was a crack not from the equipment. Nathaniel gritted his teeth and clutched his left arm as the rod rolled away with a dull clatter. Pain lanced through his forearm, hot and immediate, like something had been shoved where it didn't belong. Luthik approached, tilting its head. "You have fallen." "Yeah," Nathaniel hissed. He sat up slowly and cradled his arm. "I think it might have broken something." Luthik knelt, examining the arm clinically. "It appears malformed. I advise ceasing activity." "No argument here," Nathaniel said through a tight jaw. "Let me just get the rest of the gear down first." "You were injured." "I noticed. You should not continue." "I agree," Nathaniel said, standing carefully. "But if I leave the scanner in full sun, the calibration's toast. Let me just move this one to the shade." Luthik didn't move to stop him, but its eyes, large, clear, and unblinking, followed every motion. Nathaniel gripped the edge of the imaging unit with his good hand and dragged it under the canopy, sweat gathering at his temples. His left arm throbbed with each step. He finally slumped beside the scanner, breathing unevenly. "Okay," he said, voice hoarse. "Now I need a medkit." Luthik activated its comm link. "Medical assistance requested. Suspected limb fracture. Human male." "Thanks," Nathaniel muttered. "Why did you not stop?" Luthik asked. "You were aware of the damage." "Because sun exposure ruins the scanner," Nathaniel said. "And we only brought 2. I didn't want to waste a day of data." "That is not logical," Luthik said. "Welcome to Earth." The mobile medical unit took 20 minutes to arrive. Nathaniel sat on a crate with his arm immobilized in a sling, pale but lucid. The med tech, a woman named Clara Owens, guided him gently into the pod. "You should have called the moment it happened," she said, wrapping a soft brace around his wrist with careful hands. "I did call," Nathaniel replied. "After I moved the scanner." She glanced up. "You moved equipment before calling this in?" "I didn't want to lose the calibration." Clara looked at him like he'd grown a second head. "You probably made it worse." "Probably," Nathaniel admitted. She tapped the scanner screen and frowned. "Fracture in the distal radius. We'll confirm with an X-ray, but it looks clean. Still, you're out for at least 6 weeks." He stared at her. 6 weeks. Minimum. Luthik hovered near the doorway. "Human bone regeneration is inefficient." "Tell me about it," Nathaniel groaned. They flew him to the central hub station, where an X-ray confirmed a non-displaced fracture. No surgery, but a full cast from wrist to elbow. The next morning, Nathaniel returned to the field. Clara intercepted him at the docking platform. "You're kidding," she said, watching him awkwardly struggle into his exosuit with one arm. "It's my dominant hand that's busted," he said. "I can still work the sampling units with my right. You're going to slow down the entire team. Then they'll just have to speed up. You need rest." "I need to finish the job." Clara sighed and handed him a set of modified tools with grip extensions for one-handed use. "You're unbelievable. You know that? Comes with the job description." Luthik was waiting at the site, watching Nathaniel's approach with a puzzled expression. "You have returned. Your limb is not healed." "Nope," Nathaniel said. "But I've still got one good arm." "You intend to resume full duties with half appendage functionality?" "Not full," he said. "Just the parts one can do without making it worse. That is extremely inefficient. If you were planning on writing a report to your council about human inefficiency, maybe hold off a week or two." Luthik watched him set up the drill stand with his right hand, bracing the base with one boot. It said nothing for a long time. Later that afternoon, Luthik approached while Nathaniel logged mineral samples. Observation: human behavior under physical duress is paradoxical. You prioritize task completion over personal integrity. Nathaniel looked up. "We don't like wasting time. Pain is a deterrent, but you act despite it." "Pain's not the boss," he said. "It's more like background noise. You learn to work with it." Luthik tilted its head. "Admirable or self-destructive? Why not both?" Weeks passed. Nathaniel adapted. He developed new ways to use tools, learned to navigate the terrain more cautiously, and wore his caste like a badge of stubborn pride. Luthik observed constantly, sometimes asking questions, other times simply watching in silence. On the 22nd day after the injury, a mild quake shook the ridge where the team was working. Crates shifted. A core sample container slid toward the edge. Nathaniel, without thinking, lunged for it. His casted arm struck the rock wall. He collapsed, groaning, cradling the same arm. Clara was there within minutes. "You're injured it," she said, examining the cast, now cracked near the wrist. "I told you not to overextend." "I didn't think. Just moved. We'll need another scan." "You might have undone the healing." Luthik stood nearby, silent. The scan showed stress near the original break line, but no additional fracture. Clara recast the arm, this time with reinforced padding. "You're off field duty for at least 10 more days, she said. Nathaniel didn't argue. But the next morning, he still showed up at the equipment station, sorting samples with one hand, logging data with the other. Luthik approached again. "You continue to function, despite further impairment." "Yeah," Nathaniel said, "but I'm not lifting anything heavier than a clipboard." "You defy standard biological response protocols. Pain, disability, limitation all indicate withdrawal from effort." "I told you," Nathaniel said. "We don't like wasting time." Luthik was silent again. Later that week, a delegation of Xeros scientists visited the site. Luthik presented a report on human adaptability, using Nathaniel as a case study. Nathaniel sat in the background, arm still in a cast, typing with one hand. At one point, a Xeros delegate asked through a translator, "You shattered internal bone structure and continued operational tasks. Why?" Nathaniel looked up. "Because the work still needed doing." "But you were damaged." "Yeah," he said. "But the scanner doesn't care if I'm hurt. The ground doesn't wait. Deadlines don't pause. So I figured either I sit in bed getting bored, or I contribute what I still can." The room went quiet. Luthik finally turned. He did not disregard the injury. He endured it. That distinction is crucial. The cast came off at 6 weeks and 4 days. Nathaniel did rehab exercises in the evenings, gritting his teeth through the stiffness. This time, he actually followed Clara's instructions. By the 8th week, he was back to full field duties. And on the final day of the mission, Luthik approached him holding a tablet. "We have updated our database," it said. "Your profile contains a new designation." "Oh yeah?" Nathaniel asked. "What's that?" "Operational persistence under biological constraint." Nathaniel laughed. "Sounds fancy." "It is considered." Admirable, though still inefficient. Guess I'll take that as a compliment. I have learned, Luthik said, that efficiency is not the sole metric of success. Nathaniel raised an eyebrow. That's oddly sentimental coming from you. I may have adapted. Nathaniel chuckled and packed the last of the gear. His arm still ached on cold mornings. But it worked. The bones had healed. The job was done. And when the ship left Earth's orbit, Luthik filed one final report to the Xeros Council. It concluded with this line: the human capacity to endure pain for purpose may not be logical, but it is, undeniably, powerful. 3 days after the cast came off, Nathaniel stood barefoot on the polymer floor of the Xeros ship's climate chamber, wrist deep in a basin of cold water. A stack of flexible resistance bands lay beside him like coiled snakes, and condensation beaded along the chamber walls in lazy trails. He flexed each finger slowly, the motion stiff and jerky like a puppet testing its strings. You are still not at full strength, said Luthik, observing from the far corner, its long limbs tucked beneath its body. You struggle with elementary movement. Nathaniel exhaled. You want to try using chopsticks with a wrist that feels like it's made of old rubber bands? I have no desire to attempt chopstick manipulation. That's a shame. You'd probably be good at it with those fingers. These are appendages, not fingers. Nathaniel dunked his hand deeper into the basin and rolled his shoulders. Technicality. He turned toward the bench and picked up one of the resistance bands, looping it around his fingers. The movement was uneven. The effort showed in his jaw. Luthik shifted. Why do you not request robotic assistance? Because if I don't do this myself, the muscles won't come back. Nathaniel pulled the band gently. And I want my grip strong enough to climb again. You intend to return to vertical locomotion? Eventually. Yeah. You are aware that further trauma could result in worse outcomes. Nathaniel paused. That's true of anything worth doing. Luthik made a quiet clicking sound that might have been agreement or just processing. Nathaniel couldn't always tell. The door hissed open behind them. A Xeros med technician entered carrying a compact diagnostic sphere. It hovered at shoulder height, scanning Nathaniel's arm with a blue beam. Muscle density remains low. Ligament cohesion is improving, the technician said. Estimated time to baseline strength, 24 Earth days. See? Nathaniel said, glancing at Luthik. Progress. You remain below optimal. I'm not aiming for optimal anymore. Just functional. The tech adjusted the sphere's calibration. You are cleared for light manual tasks and supervised load bearing. Perfect, Nathaniel said. I've got a crate of field reports that need sorting. You believe paperwork qualifies as rehabilitation? It'll work my patience, if nothing else. The technician left without responding. Luthik stayed, its eyes following Nathaniel as he dried his hand on a towel and began flexing each joint again. You are aware, Luthik said, that your behavior continues to confuse my superiors. Nathaniel raised an eyebrow. I thought your last report cleared me of insanity. They now suspect you are culturally encouraged to ignore biological limitations. That's not entirely wrong. They find it alarming. Try growing up where skipping gym class because of a broken arm gets you teased for a month. That is cruel. That's middle school. Luthik was silent for a moment. Then, are all humans expected to endure injury without adjustment to workload? No, Nathaniel said. But we admire the ones who do. He reached for a heavier band and began slow curls, eyes fixed on his hand. 2 days later, he was on the logistics deck, seated at a terminal reviewing survey data from the southern ridge. His left hand now moved with more confidence, though it still shook slightly when he typed. He didn't bother hiding it. Luthik approached, carrying a folded environmental suit. You will accompany me outside. Nathaniel looked up. Fieldwork. Observation. I'm not cleared for terrain climbing. No climbing. Passive observation. Nathaniel stood and took the suit. What are we observing? Anomaly in soil stratification. You will provide interpretation. Any reason you can't interpret it yourself? I lack your intuition. Nathaniel zipped the suit. Flattery from a Xeros. I must be dreaming. They exited through the outer hull platform. The sky was overcast, clouds hanging low like torn cotton. The wind had picked up since morning, and Nathaniel pulled his hood tighter. The site was half a mile from the dock, a place where the rock face dipped into a narrow ravine. Luthick moved efficiently, barely disturbing the gravel. Nathaniel followed at a slower pace, favoring his left leg slightly. As they reached the edge, Luthick gestured to a spread of disturbed soil. The scanner indicates inconsistent mineral layering with no corresponding seismic activity. Nathaniel knelt, brushing away the top layer with gloved fingers. Looks like a sink pocket. There was no collapse. Not all of them do. Sometimes gas pockets form and shift sediment without breaking the surface. Luthick crouched beside him. You did not consult any references. Because I've seen it before. Desert research trip in Nevada. Same thing happened near a dried riverbed. You rely on experience over data. I rely on both. But sometimes it's faster to remember than to model. Luthick tilted its head. This shortcut is considered acceptable. When it works, yeah. They remained there while Nathaniel took a few readings and marked the perimeter. His arm moved more freely now, though he still paused if he twisted wrong. Luthick noticed but didn't comment. Afterward, they stood looking out over the valley. I have reviewed 273 human case studies since our arrival, Luthick said. Injury recovery data among field personnel is statistically erratic. That's because people vary. Some bounce back faster, and some insist on bouncing before they are stable. Nathaniel grinned. That's where the fun is. Back on the ship that evening, Nathaniel sat in the galley sipping soup from a thermoseal packet with his left hand. It was clumsy, but he managed. Across from him, a Xeros named Vel observed with curious intent. It had joined the mission a week prior and had not yet spoken to Nathaniel directly. You prefer using the compromised limb? Trying to retrain it, Nathaniel said. If I keep avoiding it, it'll stay weak. Vel's gaze lingered on the subtle tremble in Nathaniel's fingers. But it is inefficient. Short-term, yeah. Long-term, it's the only way to get strength back. Vel blinked slowly. You choose immediate disadvantage in pursuit of uncertain improvement. That's called recovery. The alien's head tilted. We do not follow that model. Damage is bypassed, not re-engaged. Sounds tidy. It is. But it does not lead to improvement. Nathaniel finished the soup and set the packet down. That's the trade-off. Vel seemed to consider that, then wandered away without further comment. The next morning, Nathaniel awoke with a deep ache in his forearm. He sat on the edge of his bunk, rotating his wrist slowly, grimacing at the stiffness. He didn't call the med bay. Instead, he went to the gym and wrapped a support brace around the joint before starting his stretches. By afternoon, he was back in the archive room sorting soil sample logs. Luthick entered, carrying a data pad. There is a request from Central Command, it said. They wish to observe a human performing task re-engagement post-trauma. Nathaniel raised an eyebrow. You mean they want to watch me alphabetize rock samples with a sore wrist? They wish to understand the behavior in context. Fine. But they're bringing snacks, right? They do not consume. Then they better not complain about the pacing. 3 hours later, Nathaniel stood at a workbench, examining grain density charts while 6 Xeros scientists watched from a raised platform. No one spoke. The only sound was the gentle tap of his pen against the chart. He moved with deliberate care, using both hands where necessary, shifting weight, balancing motion. Every few minutes, one of the aliens murmured something into a translator, which whispered the phrase to the others. Nathaniel ignored it. At one point, he reached for a heavy binder and winced slightly. He paused, adjusted his grip, and continued. Vel approached him afterward. You did not conceal the discomfort. No point pretending, Nathaniel said. They wanted to see recovery. That's what it looks like. They recorded every motion. Hope it was a good show. They are unsettled. Why? You continued despite hesitation. That is not a pattern they understand. Nathaniel leaned against the counter. They don't have to understand it. Just recognize it. Vel studied him a moment longer, then turned to leave. Luthik remained behind. They will revise their models, it said. But I suspect they will not easily forget this demonstration. Didn't expect to leave a legacy by shuffling paperwork with a sore wrist. Legacy is often born from small defiance. Nathaniel shrugged, his left shoulder rolling with less tension than the week before. Then I guess I'll keep defying. Snow had drifted overnight, blanketing the ridge in a thin crust that crunched underfoot. The sun hadn't cleared the peaks yet, but Nathaniel was already outside, adjusting the tripod legs of a LiDAR scanner with his left hand while his right held the stabilizing rod. The brace was gone. In its place, a compression sleeve hugged his wrist, black against the gray of his suit. You are applying torsion to the joint again, Luthik noted, standing several meters back, its gaze angled slightly downward. Is that within your prescribed limitations? I've got 20 degrees more range than last week, Nathaniel said, checking the scanner's alignment. I'm not overdoing it. The motion appears strenuous. It is, he said. But that's the point now. Luthik stepped forward, its long limbs barely disturbing the snow. The central observers do not believe this task requires your involvement anymore. They have allocated personnel for manual calibration. I know, but you continue. Because I need to see if the arm holds up under real use. You are using scientific equipment as a diagnostic tool for your own anatomy? Exactly. Luthik paused. Unorthodox. Effective. The scanner beeped twice, indicating a successful calibration. Nathaniel adjusted the field sweep to cover a wider arc and stepped back. Signals clean, he said. We'll get a full terrain map before midday. Luthik inclined its head. You are not catalogued as a medical specialist. Yet you self-monitor with a consistency most of our recovery units lack. I'm not trying to be a specialist. I just don't want to wait around hoping things improve. The threshold for your tolerance to delayed results is extremely low. Yeah, patience isn't exactly a national trait. They walked back toward the main path that curved around the ridge. The snow was already melting in patches under the morning light. A transport drone passed overhead, its shadow flickering across the ground. As they reached the base of the slope, Vel was waiting near a cargo unit, organizing metallic sample tubes into storage trays with eerie precision. You are finished early, Vel said, not looking up. Scanners behaving, Nathaniel replied. Took half the time we planned. Vel placed a tray into the container and turned. I observed your grip strength earlier. You compensated for instability with shoulder rotation. Yeah, I'm still working on isolating the forearm. You should not be performing heavy manipulation if the joint remains compromised. It's not compromised. It's recovering. There is measurable difference between those states. I'm aware. Luthik watched the exchange in silence. Vel studied Nathaniel a moment longer. Your methods are difficult to quantify. You trying to quantify me? I was asked to. You won't like the results. Vel blinked once. That is already clear. Later that afternoon, Nathaniel sat in the med unit with his arm submerged in a circulation sleeve that pulsed gently to reduce inflammation. Clara stood beside him, reviewing scanned motion data on a tablet. You've got 70% grip strength back, she said. That's a big jump. I've been using it more. That's not always a good thing. I'm careful. I've seen your version of careful. He didn't argue. Instead, he turned his wrist slowly under the sleeve's pressure, watching the tendons shift beneath the skin. Still gets stiff if I sleep on it funny, he said. That could last a while. How long's a while? Some people report tightness for years. Depends on how much scar tissue forms. Great. Clara set the tablet down. You're doing better than expected. But you need to understand something. Healing isn't a straight line. You're going to have setbacks. If you push too hard too fast, you'll build strength over damage, and that's a shortcut to chronic problems. I'm not ignoring the risk. No. But you're treating it like a riddle you can logic your way through. He looked at her. If I don't work through it, I start to feel useless. Being careful doesn't make you useless. It does when the rest of the team's hauling gear and I'm stuck writing notes. Clara crossed her arms. You think you're the only one who's had to sit out a rotation? You think the rest of us don't feel that same pressure? It's different when you're the one they're watching. She softened slightly. You mean the aliens? They're trying to understand us. And I'm the only one on this mission who's had a visible injury. Every time I lift something or wince or don't wince, they're taking notes. They're not judging you. No, he said. They're studying me. Clara didn't respond right away. Then she tapped the sleeve's console and shut it off. Just don't let proving a point become your whole reason for getting better. He flexed his fingers as the sleeve deflated. Fair enough. By the following day, the skies had cleared completely, and the research team moved to the northern plateau to begin a new round of magnetic resonance sampling. The terrain was uneven, but Nathaniel volunteered to set the beacon anchors, citing familiarity with the layout. Vel accompanied him this time, carrying the resonance coils in a hover crate that buzzed softly behind them. Your leg gait has altered, Vel said as they walked. I slipped earlier. Tweak my knee a little. You are accumulating minor damage. That's how you know you're doing something. That is an inefficient marker of progress. Nathaniel stopped at a flat patch of shale and began placing the first anchor. You know what progress looks like to me? Being able to do this without needing help. You required help 3 days ago. Exactly. That's progress. Vel placed a coil beside him without comment. Once all 4 anchors were set, Nathaniel adjusted the resonance field manually, checking each frequency with a handheld tuner. His hand shook once while dialing the 3rd anchor, but he caught it quickly and steadied himself. Vel watched without offering assistance. When they were done and the field activated, Nathaniel stepped back and wiped his forehead with the sleeve of his suit. You did not request assistance, Vel said. I didn't need it. You paused twice during calibration. And still finished. Vel looked at him, then at the glowing field lines pulsing between the anchors. You are not attempting to prove superiority, Vel said slowly. You are attempting to restore normalcy. That's the goal. And by doing so, you make discomfort irrelevant. No, Nathaniel said. I just don't let it decide for me. Vel turned slightly toward the field. This behavior is deeply unsettling to many of our analysts. Why? Because it implies control over pain that cannot be externally measured. Nathaniel laughed once, short and tired. Welcome to the human experience. 3 days later, the final stage of the mission wrapped. All data had been logged and the last of the atmospheric readings uploaded to the central archive. Nathaniel stood on the observation deck, arm crossed over his chest, watching the Earth shrink into the black. Luthik approached quietly. You have been cleared for full reintegration into field status upon next assignment. Thanks. You are aware that the Council has amended several profiling assumptions based on your behavior. I figured. You were not the only observational subject, Luthik added. But your case was the most contradictory. Nathaniel turned. That's a compliment, right? It is a statement. I'll take it anyway. Luthik looked at him, then at the blue sphere fading into the distance. Your kind's tolerance for adversity is not uniform. Yet the capacity for persistence appears uniquely distributed. People surprise you. They do. Nathaniel's fingers flexed reflexively. No pain, just memory. Well, he said, I'm ready for the next one. You may rest. I might. For a few days. Luthik gave a slow nod. Then I will revise the report to include recovery achieved without deviation from personal trajectory. Nathaniel smiled at that. Sounds like me. And this time he didn't need help lifting the equipment case.